The day Sarah Northrop watched her husband-to-be walk away without a backward glance was the day she learned that love without honesty was just another kind of loneliness. 3 months had passed since then, and she still found herself checking her phone for messages that would never come. Her small apartment in downtown Chicago felt simultaneously too empty and too full of memories she wanted to forget. "You need to get out more," her best friend Maya said over coffee one Saturday morning. "When was the last time you did something just for yourself?" Sarah stirred her latte absently. "I go to work. I come home. That's doing something. That's called existing, not living." Maya leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "I'm serious, Sarah. You're 26 years old. You can't let one terrible man ruin the rest of your life." "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just being careful. You're hiding." Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through something. "Look, there's this volunteer opportunity at the Children's Hospital. You always said you wanted to do something meaningful. Maybe this is your chance." Sarah looked at the screen, seeing smiling kids in hospital gowns, volunteers reading stories and playing games. Something stirred in her chest, something that felt almost like hope. "I don't know. Just think about it. Promise me you'll at least consider it." "I'll think about it," Sarah agreed, knowing even as she said it that she probably would not follow through. But 3 days later, after another evening of microwaved dinner and mindless television, she found herself filling out the volunteer application. Within a week, she had completed the background check and orientation. Within 2 weeks, she was walking through the bright, cheerfully decorated halls of St. Mary's Children's Hospital, her volunteer badge clipped to her shirt, wondering what she had gotten herself into. The volunteer coordinator, an energetic woman named Patricia, led her through the building. "We have several programs, but I thought you might enjoy our reading program. You spend time with the kids, read to them, play quiet games. Some of them are here for a day, others for months. It's rewarding work, but it can be emotionally challenging." "I understand," Sarah said, though she was not sure she truly did. Patricia stopped outside a bright playroom. "Let me introduce you to one of our biggest supporters. He actually funds most of our recreational programs." She pushed open the door, and Sarah followed her inside. The first thing she noticed was how the afternoon light streamed through the large windows, making the room feel warm and welcoming. The second thing she noticed was the man sitting cross-legged on the floor, a little girl with a pink headscarf giggling as he tried to stack blocks according to her very specific instructions. "Thomas, do you have a minute?" Patricia called out. The man looked up and Sarah felt her breath catch. He was handsome in an understated way, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, strong features and gray eyes that seemed both warm and guarded at the same time. He was tall. She could tell even with him sitting down, with broad shoulders and capable hands. There was something about the way he moved as he stood, careful not to disturb the block tower, that suggested both strength and gentleness. "Perfect timing," he said, his voice deep and pleasant. "Emma just declared me the worst block stacker in the entire world." The little girl giggled. "You kept putting the blue ones on top. Everyone knows blue goes on the bottom." "My mistake," he said solemnly, though his eyes crinkled with amusement. He walked over to them, and Sarah noticed he was wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater, casual and comfortable. "Thomas Hartley," he said, extending his hand. "Sarah Northrop. I'm starting as a volunteer today." His handshake was firm and warm. "Welcome to the chaos. Fair warning, the kids will run circles around you and you'll love every minute of it." "Thomas volunteers here 3 times a week," Patricia explained. "He's been doing it for almost 2 years now." "Someone has to make sure these troublemakers stay entertained," Thomas said. But there was genuine affection in his voice as he glanced back at Emma, who was now reconstructing her block tower with fierce concentration. Patricia's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with a frown. "I need to take this. Thomas, would you mind showing Sarah around for a bit?" "Not at all." As Patricia hurried off, Thomas gestured toward the play area. "So, what brings you to St. Mary's?" Besides Patricia's very persuasive recruiting techniques, Sarah smiled slightly. "A friend told me I needed to get out more. Do something meaningful." "Well, you came to the right place. These kids will definitely give you meaning. Also, chaos, noise, and probably glitter in places glitter should never be." "Sounds perfect," Sarah said, surprising herself with the sincerity in her voice. Over the next hour, Thomas introduced her to several children, explaining each one's situation with a gentle discretion that impressed her. He knew all their names, their favorite games, their quirks and preferences. He was patient and kind, but also playful, getting down on their level both literally and figuratively. "You're really good with them," Sarah observed as they took a brief break in the hallway. Thomas looked almost uncomfortable with the compliment. "I just show up." "They do all the heavy lifting, honestly. Kids are remarkably resilient. Still, not everyone would dedicate this much time. Patricia said you fund the recreational programs. I believe in what they do here." He said it simply, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Every kid deserves a chance to just be a kid, even when they're dealing with things no kid should have to deal with. There was something in his voice, a depth of feeling that suggested this was personal somehow, but Sarah did not press. They had just met, after all. "So what do you do when you're not here being the worst block stacker in the world?" she asked instead. He gave her a lopsided smile. "I work in pharmaceuticals, research and development mostly. It's a lot of labs and paperwork and very serious people in very serious meetings." "Sounds important." "It is. But this," he gestured around them, "this feels more real somehow, more human." Sarah understood exactly what he meant. In the month since her engagement had imploded, everything had felt distant and surreal. But here, in this bright hospital with these brave kids and this surprisingly genuine man, she felt present in a way she had not in a long time. "I should get back," Thomas said, checking his watch. "I promised Emma I'd help her finish a puzzle before I leave. Will you be here next week?" "Wednesday afternoon," Sarah confirmed. "That's one of my days, too. I'll see you then." As he walked back into the playroom, Sarah realized she was actually looking forward to next week, and that small spark of anticipation felt like a tiny miracle. Sarah's Wednesday afternoon shifts at the hospital quickly became the highlight of her week. She read stories to children too sick to sit up, played board games with teenagers bored out of their minds, and learned to braid hair from a 10-year-old with more expertise than she would ever have. But if she was honest with herself, part of her enthusiasm had to do with Thomas Hartley. He was always there on Wednesdays, and usually on Fridays too, which Sarah had started picking up as an additional shift. They fell into an easy friendship, the kind that felt natural and unforced. They worked together entertaining restless kids, collaborated on elaborate scavenger hunts through the hospital corridors, and shared coffee in the volunteer lounge when they had a break. "Tell me something," Sarah said one afternoon about a month into her volunteering. They were sitting in the lounge, watching through the window as snow began to fall over Chicago. "Why pharmaceuticals? You don't seem like the corporate type." Thomas wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. "Family business, actually. My father started a small research company 40 years ago. I grew up in labs, watching him work on treatments for rare diseases. He always said that medicine was about giving people time. Time to live, time to love, time to just be. I wanted to continue that legacy. That's beautiful. It's also exhausting and frequently heartbreaking." We spend years developing something that might help, and then clinical trials fail, or funding falls through, or someone else beats us to market. He paused. But when something works, when a treatment we developed actually helps people, it makes all the frustration worth it. Is that why you volunteer here? Because of the medical connection? Thomas was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes distant. Partly, but it's also personal. I lost someone close to me when I was younger, a cousin who spent a lot of time in hospitals like this one. I remember how much the volunteers meant to him, how they made him feel normal when everything else in his life was about being sick. I wanted to be that person for other kids. Sarah felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry about your cousin. Thank you. It was a long time ago, but you never really forget. He seemed to shake himself out of the melancholy, offering her a small smile. What about you? What do you do when you're not here? Nothing nearly as impressive. I work in event planning, corporate conferences mostly. I coordinate schedules and venues and make sure executives have the right kind of coffee creamer in their breakout rooms. That sounds incredibly complicated. It's a lot of details and a lot of very particular people, but I'm good at organizing chaos. I can see that, Thomas said, gesturing toward the playroom where Sarah had earlier orchestrated an elaborate art project involving 12 kids, 3 volunteers, and enough paint to redecorate the entire floor. You made that look effortless. Years of managing egos and emergencies. Children are actually easier than most CEOs. Thomas laughed, a genuine sound that made Sarah smile. I might have to steal that line. As winter deepened into February, Sarah found herself thinking about Thomas more often than she probably should. He was kind and funny and surprisingly humble, despite the fact that she had learned, through careful internet research and a few comments from other volunteers, that his family business was actually Hartley Pharmaceuticals, a multi-billion-dollar company that had developed several groundbreaking treatments for autoimmune diseases and rare genetic disorders. Thomas was not just involved in the company. He was the CEO. She had not mentioned that she knew. Something about the way he kept that information quiet suggested he appreciated being treated like a regular person rather than a billionaire. And honestly, it did not change how she saw him. He was still the man who patiently helped Emma with her blocks and made terrible jokes to cheer up scared kids. It was on a particularly cold Friday in late February that everything shifted. Sarah was reading to a group of younger children when Patricia came in, looking worried. Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. One of our long-term patients just got some difficult news, and she's asked specifically for Thomas. He's in a meeting downtown, but his assistant said he'd be here as soon as possible. Could you possibly sit with her until he arrives? Her name is Lily, room 314. Of course, Sarah said immediately, making sure another volunteer could take over story time. Room 314 was quieter than most, with drawings covering almost every available wall space. Sitting on the bed was a girl around 8 years old with wise eyes and a collection of colorful scarves covering her head. Hi, Lily, Sarah said softly. I'm Sarah. Patricia said you might want some company. Lily looked up, her eyes red from crying. I wanted Mr. Thomas. He's on his way. But I thought maybe I could sit with you until he gets here, if that's okay. After a moment, Lily nodded. Sarah pulled up a chair beside the bed. You want to talk about it? Sarah asked gently. The doctors said the treatment is not working. They want to try something else, but it's going to make me really sick. Lily's voice was small. I'm tired of being sick. Sarah's heart broke. She reached out and took the little girl's hand. I know, I can't imagine how hard this is. Mr. Thomas understands. His mom was sick for a long time too. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. His mom, she had cancer. She died when he was in college. He told me about it once when I was really sad. He said being sad is okay and being angry is okay too. Before Sarah could respond, the door opened and Thomas walked in, still wearing a suit from his meeting, his face tense with worry. But when he saw Lily, his expression softened immediately. "Hey, little warrior," he said, coming to sit on the other side of the bed. "I hear today was a rough day." Lily launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, holding her as she cried. Sarah felt tears prick her own eyes at the tenderness of the moment. "I don't want to do more treatment," Lily sobbed. "I want to go home." "I know, sweetheart, I know." Thomas met Sarah's eyes over Lily's head, and she saw the pain there, the helplessness. "But the doctors think this new treatment has a really good chance of working, and I'll be here the whole time. I promise." "You promise?" "I promise. Every step of the way." Sarah stayed with them for another hour, until Lily's parents arrived and she finally fell into an exhausted sleep. Thomas walked Sarah down to the volunteer lounge, both of them emotionally drained. "Thank you for sitting with her," Thomas said quietly. "I know that could not have been easy. She's a remarkable kid. She really is." He rubbed his face tiredly. "Days like this remind me why I do what I do. Every treatment we develop, every drug that makes it to market, it's for kids like Lily. Kids who deserve a chance to grow up and have normal, boring, beautiful lives." "Lily mentioned your mom," Sarah said carefully. "I'm sorry. I did not know." Thomas leaned against the wall, his expression distant. "She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when I was 19. She fought for 4 years. Toward the end, she made me promise that I would use our resources to help others, that I would not let our money just sit in banks or get spent on pointless luxury. She wanted it to mean something. You've honored that promise." "I try. Some days I wonder if I'm doing enough." Sarah stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. "Thomas, you're here 3 times a week. You fund programs that bring joy to kids going through the worst time of their lives. You're developing treatments that save lives. You're doing more than enough." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face, and something passed between them. An understanding, a connection that went deeper than friendship. "Would you want to get dinner sometime?" The question came out rushed, almost nervous. "I mean, outside of the hospital. Not as volunteers, just as us." Sarah felt her heart skip. "I'd really like that." His smile was genuine and warm. "Tomorrow night I know a quiet place, nothing fancy. Good food, better company." "That sounds perfect." The restaurant Thomas chose was indeed quiet. A small Italian place tucked into a side street with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. It was charming and intimate without being pretentious. "I was worried you might expect something fancier," Thomas admitted as they looked at menus. "But I've never been comfortable with those places where they serve tiny portions on giant plates and everyone whispers like they're in a library." Sarah laughed. "This is much better. I'm here for actual food and actual conversation." They talked easily, the way they did at the hospital, but with more depth, more personal detail. Sarah told him about her broken engagement, how she had caught her fiancé lying about everything from his job to his finances to other women. "The worst part was not that he lied," she said, twirling pasta on her fork. "It was that I had convinced myself I was happy. I had built this whole future in my head, and it was all based on nothing. That must have been devastating." It was. "But honestly, looking back now, I think I was more in love with the idea of being in love than with him specifically. I wanted the security, the partnership, the feeling of moving forward in life. I did not really see him for who he was." Thomas nodded slowly. "I understand that. After my mom died, I threw myself into work. I told myself I was honoring her memory, but really I was just avoiding dealing with the grief. It's easier to focus on business strategies and clinical trials than to sit with difficult emotions. Have you dated much since then? Sarah asked, then immediately felt her face flush. Sorry, that's probably too personal. No, it's okay. The answer is not really. A few short relationships, nothing serious. Part of it is the work. I travel constantly, I'm in meetings until late, I'm always on call for the company. But part of it is also that most people, when they find out about the money, they change. Suddenly, I'm not just Thomas anymore. I'm Thomas Hartley, billionaire CEO, and I never know if they're interested in me or the lifestyle. For what it's worth, I Googled you after the first week, Sarah admitted. I was curious why someone would be so dedicated to volunteering. When I found out about Hartley Pharmaceuticals, I was surprised, but it did not change how I saw you. You're still the guy who's terrible at stacking blocks. Thomas laughed. I appreciate that more than you know. They lingered over dessert, talking until the restaurant staff started giving them pointed looks. Outside, snow was falling again, soft flakes drifting through the streetlights. Can I walk you home? Thomas asked. Or I can call you a car if you prefer. Walking is good, I'm only about 15 minutes away. They walked slowly through the quiet streets, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. When they reached Sarah's building, Thomas turned to face her. I had a really good time tonight. Me too. Can I see you again? Outside of the hospital. I'd like that, Sarah said, smiling up at him. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and kissed her softly. It was gentle and sweet and perfect, and when they pulled apart, Sarah felt like she was glowing. Good night, Sarah. Good night, Thomas. She watched him walk away before heading inside, her heart full in a way it had not been in longer than she could remember. Over the next few months, Sarah and Thomas grew closer. They continued their volunteer work at the hospital, but they also spent time together outside those walls. He took her to his favorite bookstore, a cramped space packed floor to ceiling with old volumes. She brought him to her favorite spot along the lakefront, where they watched the sun set over the water. They cooked dinner together in his surprisingly modest apartment, laughed at terrible movies, and talked late into the night about everything and nothing. It was easy and comfortable and thrilling all at once. Thomas was unlike anyone Sarah had ever dated. He was confident without being arrogant, successful without being flashy, strong but also vulnerable in ways that made her heart ache. One evening in late April, Thomas invited her to a company fundraiser. I know it's not your favorite kind of thing, he said. It's going to be fancy and full of people trying to impress each other, but it would mean a lot to have you there. Of course I'll go, Sarah said. Though I'm going to need to find a dress. You could wear jeans and still be the most beautiful woman there. The fundraiser was held at one of Chicago's premier hotels, a glittering affair with hundreds of attendees. Sarah wore a deep blue dress that Maya had helped her pick out, and from the look on Thomas's face when he picked her up, the shopping trip had been worth it. You look stunning, he said, his voice slightly rough. You clean up pretty well yourself, she replied, admiring the way his tuxedo fit his broad shoulders. At the event, Sarah watched Thomas navigate the crowd with practiced ease. He introduced her to board members and researchers, donors and colleagues, always keeping her close, his hand warm against the small of her back. People clearly respected him, but there was also genuine affection in many of the interactions. He was not just a CEO writing checks. He was actively involved, knowledgeable about the research, passionate about the mission. During dinner, an older woman approached their table. She had silver hair and sharp eyes and moved with the confidence of someone who was used to being listened to. Thomas, darling, she said, kissing his cheek. "You've outdone yourself with this year's fundraiser. The silent auction alone will fund research for months. Dr. Chen, I want you to meet Sarah Northrop. Sarah, this is Dr. Margaret Chen. She heads our genetics research division." "Lovely to meet you," Dr. Chen said warmly. Then to Thomas, "I was hoping to steal you away for a moment. There's someone I'd like you to meet, a potential investor." Thomas glanced at Sarah apologetically. "Would you mind? Go, do your CEO thing, I'll be fine." She watched him walk away, then decided to get some air on the terrace. The night was warm for April, and the city sparkled below her. "You must be very special." Sarah turned to find a woman about her age standing nearby, champagne glass in hand. She was beautiful in a sharp, polished way, with auburn hair and green eyes. "Excuse me," to Thomas. "I've known him for years, and I've never seen him bring someone to one of these events. I'm Victoria, by the way, Victoria Marsh. My father's company partners with Hartley Pharmaceuticals." Sarah Northrop. They shook hands, and Sarah tried to ignore the vague sense of unease she felt. "How did you meet? If you don't mind me asking." "We volunteer together at a children's hospital." Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Thomas still does that." "I thought he would have gotten too busy by now." "He makes time for what's important to him, clearly." Victoria took a sip of her champagne. "I should warn you, dating Thomas Hartley comes with complications. The media attention, the pressure, the expectations. Not everyone can handle it." "I appreciate the concern, but I think I can manage." "I'm sure you think you can. But when things get difficult, when the reality of his life becomes unavoidable, most people run. Just something to keep in mind." Before Sarah could respond, Thomas appeared at her side. "There you are." "Sorry that took longer than expected." He glanced at Victoria, his expression cooling slightly. "Victoria, I did not know you'd be here tonight. Father insisted I represent the family. You know how he is." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I was just getting to know your lovely date." "Sarah and I were having a fascinating conversation." "I'm sure you were." Thomas placed his hand on Sarah's waist. "If you'll excuse us, I promised Sarah a dance." He guided Sarah back inside to the ballroom, where a band was playing something slow and romantic. "Sorry about that," he said as they moved onto the dance floor. "Victoria can be intense. She seemed to think she was being helpful, warning me about the complications of dating you." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Victoria and I dated briefly years ago. It ended badly. She's never quite gotten over the idea that we were a good match." "Were you?" "Not even remotely. She was interested in the lifestyle, the status. She once told me she loved the idea of being Mrs. Hartley more than she loved me specifically." He pulled Sarah closer. "You're nothing like her. You see me, the real me. That's rare and precious, and I'm not going to let Victoria's bitterness ruin what we have." Sarah leaned her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I'm not going anywhere." "Good, because I'm falling in love with you, Sarah Northrop. And that's something I don't say lightly." She looked up at him, seeing the vulnerability and sincerity in his gray eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too." They kissed there on the dance floor, surrounded by hundreds of people but aware only of each other. Summer arrived with a heat wave that had all of Chicago seeking air conditioning and cold drinks. Sarah and Thomas spent their weekends finding creative ways to stay cool, including a memorable day at Navy Pier, where Thomas won her an enormous stuffed bear at one of the game booths. "Where am I supposed to put this?" Sarah asked, laughing as she struggled to carry the bear. "That's your problem," Thomas said, grinning. "I'm just the skilled carnival game champion who won it for you. You bribed the guy running the booth. I prefer to think of it as strategic negotiation." Things were good. Better than good. Sarah had never been happier. She had moved into a slightly larger apartment, one that Thomas had helped her find, and that he spent enough time at that he kept clothes in her closet and coffee in her cupboard. They talked about the future in careful, hopeful ways. Neither of them were rushing, but both of them were clearly thinking long-term. It was in August that things began to shift. Thomas started having more business trips, longer meetings, increased stress lines around his eyes. Sarah noticed but did not push, figuring he would talk to her when he was ready. Finally, one evening after a particularly long day, she found him sitting on her couch, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting beside him. Thomas was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "The company is developing a new fertility treatment. It's groundbreaking, potentially revolutionary. Early trials have shown remarkable success for couples who have struggled with infertility." "That's amazing, Thomas." "It is, but it's also incredibly personal for me." He turned to look at her, his expression heavy with something she could not quite name. "When I was 23, I was diagnosed with a genetic condition. It's rare, doesn't really affect my health in any major way, but it does affect my fertility. The doctors told me that having biological children would be extremely difficult, possibly impossible." Sarah felt her breath catch. "Thomas, I've known for years. It's part of why I've avoided serious relationships. I kept thinking, how do I tell someone I care about that the traditional family life might not be possible? How do I ask someone to take that risk with me? Why are you telling me now? Because we're developing this treatment, and I keep thinking about it, wondering if it might work for me. If maybe there's a chance after all." He took her hands in his. "But more than that, I'm telling you because I love you, because I can see a future with you and you deserve to know all of it. The good and the complicated." Sarah's mind was racing. She had not really thought much about children. She was 27, focused on her career and her relationship. But hearing Thomas's pain, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, made her heart ache. "Have you talked to your doctors about the new treatment?" she asked carefully. "I have a consultation scheduled next week." "But Sarah, I need you to understand what this might mean. If I try the treatment and it doesn't work, I need to know you're okay with that, that we're okay." She cupped his face in her hands. "Thomas, I love you, not the potential version of you, not the theoretical future we might have. I love you as you are right now. Yes, having children might be complicated, but that doesn't change how I feel. You say that now. I say that because I mean it. We'll figure it out, together. Whether that means trying the treatment or adoption or surrogacy or just building a different kind of life, there are options." Thomas pulled her close, holding her tightly. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do, and I'm not going anywhere." The next week, Sarah accompanied Thomas to his doctor's appointment. Dr. Reeves was a kind man in his 50s who clearly respected Thomas and treated him with compassionate honesty. "The treatment is still in clinical trials," Dr. Reeves explained, "but the results so far have been promising. For someone with your specific condition, I'd estimate about a 40% success rate. Those aren't bad odds, but they're not guarantees either." "What does the treatment involve?" Sarah asked. "It's a combination of hormone therapy and genetic intervention. We'd need Thomas to commit to about 6 months of treatment with regular monitoring. There can be side effects, mood changes, fatigue, but nothing dangerous." Thomas looked at Sarah, then back at the doctor. "I want to try." "You don't have to decide right now," Sarah said softly. "I know. But I want to. For myself and for us. I want to know I did everything I could." Dr. Reeves nodded. "I'll have my office set up a treatment schedule. We'll start next month." As they left the office, Sarah felt a strange mixture of hope and apprehension. She meant what she had said. She loved Thomas regardless. But she also knew this journey was going to test them in ways they had not been tested before. The first month of treatment was relatively easy. Thomas took medication daily, went in for weekly checkups, and aside from some tiredness, seemed to handle it well. But as the treatment progressed, the side effects became more pronounced. He was exhausted all the time, falling asleep on Sarah's couch after dinner, struggling to maintain his usual energy at the hospital. His mood was more volatile, swinging from hopeful to frustrated to depressed sometimes within hours. Work became more stressful as he tried to maintain his CEO responsibilities while dealing with the physical and emotional toll of the treatment. Sarah did her best to support him. She coordinated his appointment schedule with his work calendar, made sure he ate properly, and held him when the frustration became too much. But it was hard. She was tired too, emotionally drained from watching someone she loved struggle. "I don't know how you do it," Thomas said one particularly difficult night. He had come home from a rough day at work to find Sarah had made his favorite dinner, cleaned the apartment, and drawn him a bath. "I've been terrible company for weeks, and you're still here. Where else would I be?" Sarah asked, sitting on the edge of the tub as he soaked. "Dating someone easier, someone who doesn't come with all this baggage." "You're not baggage, Thomas. You're the man I love, and love means showing up, especially when things are hard." "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "What if the treatment doesn't work? What if we go through all of this and nothing changes?" Sarah was scared too, but she kept her voice steady. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, we're here. We're together. That's what matters." By month 4, Thomas was struggling more than ever. The treatment was affecting his hormone levels in ways that left him feeling unlike himself. He was emotional in ways he was not used to, crying at commercials and getting angry over small frustrations. The doctors assured him this was normal, a side effect of the medications, but that did not make it easier. At work, there were whispers. Thomas was distracted, less focused. He missed a major meeting because he was at a medical appointment, and rumors started circulating about his health. The board began questioning his judgment on key decisions. "Maybe I should step back," he told Sarah one evening. "Take a leave of absence until the treatment is done." "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want anymore. I just know I'm failing at everything. I'm a mess at work, I'm barely keeping up at the hospital, and I'm putting all this stress on you." "You're not putting anything on me," Sarah said firmly. "I chose this. I'm choosing this every single day. But Thomas, you need to take care of yourself. If stepping back from work helps, then do it. The company will survive. My father built that company from nothing. And your father would want you to take care of yourself first. You told me he used to say medicine was about giving people time to live and love. Give yourself that time." Thomas eventually agreed to a temporary leave, handing over day-to-day operations to his very capable COO. It was the right decision, but it was also humbling for someone who had spent his entire adult life defined by his work. Sarah watched him grapple with his identity, with feeling useful and purposeful when he was not in an office or a lab. She suggested they spend more time at the hospital, focusing on the volunteer work that had brought them together in the first place. Lily was doing better. The new treatment protocol was working, and her scans showed significant improvement. Seeing her smile, hearing her laugh, reminded both Thomas and Sarah why they were fighting so hard for something good to come from struggle. "Mr. Thomas," Lily said one afternoon, "you look tired." "I am tired, little warrior, but I'm okay." "Are you sick like me?" Thomas glanced at Sarah, then back at Lily. "Not sick exactly, but I'm going through some medical stuff. It's hard sometimes." Lily nodded seriously. "It's okay to be sad about it. That's what you told me. You're right." "Very wise. And you have Miss Sarah to help you. That's good. Everyone needs someone to help them. Thomas reached over and took Sarah's hand. You're absolutely right. Month 5 brought new challenges. Thomas's hormone levels were fluctuating wildly as the treatment reached its most intensive phase. He had severe mood swings, breaking down crying one moment and feeling euphoric the next. His body was changing too, gaining and losing weight seemingly overnight, his energy levels completely unpredictable. Sarah felt like she was watching someone she loved go through something terrible, and there was nothing she could do to make it better. She held him when he cried, gave him space when he needed it, and tried to stay strong even though she was exhausted. Her own work was suffering. She had missed several important client meetings, her focus was shot, and her boss had pulled her aside to express concern. Maya was worried too, telling Sarah she looked worn out and overwhelmed. I'm fine, Sarah insisted over coffee one afternoon while Thomas was at another appointment. You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground trying to take care of him. He needs me. I know he does. But you need to take care of yourself too. You can't pour from an empty cup, Sarah. I just need to get through this next month. One more month and the treatment is done and we'll know if it worked. And what if it didn't work? What then? Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. Then we'll figure out the next step, together. Maya squeezed her hand. I love you, and I think what you're doing is incredible. But please, please take care of yourself too. The final month was the hardest. Thomas was irritable and exhausted, his body pushed to its limits by the aggressive treatment protocol. They fought more than they ever had, stupid arguments about nothing that were really about the stress and fear they were both carrying. After one particularly bad fight where Thomas had accused Sarah of being too controlling and Sarah had snapped back that she was just trying to help, they both sat in tense silence. This is not us, Thomas finally said. We don't do this. No, we don't. Sarah's voice was thick with unshed tears. But we're under so much pressure, Thomas. You're going through hell and I feel helpless. I know, I'm sorry. I'm taking all of this out on you and that's not fair. It's not about fair. It's about getting through this together. But I need you to let me in. Stop trying to protect me from how hard this is for you. Thomas moved closer, taking her hands. I'm scared, Sarah. I'm scared the treatment won't work. I'm scared I'm not enough for you. I'm scared that even if we get through this, the damage will be done. The only way damage gets done is if we stop fighting for us. I love you. That hasn't changed, not even a little bit. But we need to communicate better. Be honest about what we're feeling instead of letting it build up until we explode. You're right. You're always right. Not always. But I'm right about this. They held each other, both crying, both exhausted, but both still committed to seeing this through. The final appointment came on a cold morning in December, almost exactly 6 months after the treatment began. Thomas and Sarah sat in Dr. Reeves's office, holding hands so tightly their fingers were white. The tests show that the treatment has had a partial effect, Dr. Reeves said carefully. Your fertility markers have improved significantly, Thomas. While I can't guarantee conception will be easy or even possible, your chances are substantially better than they were 6 months ago. I'd estimate you've gone from less than 5% probability to around 35 to 40%. Thomas let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for months. 35 to 40%. Those are good odds, Dr. Reeves said gently. Not perfect, but good. And there are additional interventions we can explore if needed. Assisted reproductive technologies, hormone supplementation, other options. But we could try. Naturally, you could absolutely try. I'd recommend giving your body a few months to recover from the treatment before actively attempting conception, but yes. The door is open now in a way it wasn't before. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Not because the treatment had been a complete success, not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because they had made it through. They had survived 6 of the hardest months of their lives, and they had done it together. Outside the doctor's office, Thomas pulled Sarah into his arms. "We did it. You did it. You were so brave, Thomas. I couldn't have done it without you." "There were days I wanted to quit, to give up, to say it wasn't worth it, but you kept believing in us." "We kept believing in us," Sarah corrected. "Both of us." They stood there in the cold Chicago morning, holding each other, and Sarah realized that Victoria had been wrong. The complications of loving Thomas Hartley had not driven her away. Instead, they had shown her what real love looked like. It was not just the easy moments, the romantic dinners and sunset walks. It was showing up when things were hard. It was holding steady when everything felt uncertain. It was choosing each other every single day, even when that choice was difficult. The months following the treatment were about recovery and reconnection. Thomas slowly regained his energy, his mood stabilized, and he returned to work with renewed focus and purpose. Sarah cut back on her own hours, realizing that she had been using work as a distraction from her own fears and anxieties. They went back to volunteering at the hospital, finding joy in the routines that had first brought them together. Lily was officially in remission, her infectious laugh filling the playroom as she beat Thomas at every game they played. "I let her win," Thomas insisted after Lily trounced him at checkers for the 3rd time in a row. "You're just bad at games," Sarah teased. "I'm excellent at games. I'm just generous with victories." In February, exactly 1 year after their first date, Thomas took Sarah to the same small Italian restaurant. They ordered the same meals, talked and laughed like they always did. And then, as dessert arrived, Thomas got down on one knee. "Sarah Northrop, this past year has been the hardest and the best year of my life. You've seen me at my worst, and you chose to stay. You've held me when I fell apart, believed in me when I doubted myself, and loved me through all of it. I don't know what our future holds. I don't know if we'll have children easily or if we'll face more challenges, but I know that I want to face whatever comes next with you by my side. Will you marry me?" Sarah was crying and laughing all at once. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." The ring was beautiful. A simple band with a single diamond that caught the candlelight. It was elegant and understated, just like Thomas himself. They married that summer in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens, surrounded by close friends and family. Lily was the flower girl, her scarves replaced with a crown of real flowers, her smile bright and healthy. Maya was Sarah's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Dr. Chen gave a toast about how Thomas had always been brilliant at science, but had finally figured out the most important equation. Love plus commitment equals happiness. The reception was held at the same hotel where Sarah had first seen Thomas navigate the world of philanthropy and business. But this time, he spent the entire evening focused on her, dancing and laughing and stealing kisses when he thought no one was looking. "Ready to start our adventure, Mrs. Hartley?" he asked as they left the reception, both of them glowing with happiness. "I thought the adventure already started," Sarah replied. "This is just the next chapter." They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks eating amazing food, touring ancient ruins, and simply being together without the weight of treatments or schedules or expectations. It was blissful and restorative, exactly what they both needed. When they returned to Chicago, they moved into a house together, a beautiful brownstone with big windows and a small garden. It felt like home in a way neither of their apartments ever had. They decided to start trying for a baby in the fall, almost 18 months after Thomas had completed his treatment. Dr. Reeves had assured them that Thomas's system was fully recovered, and while there were no guarantees, they had as good a chance as they were going to get. The first few months were exciting but also stressful. Sarah found herself obsessing over ovulation calendars and pregnancy tests, analyzing every twinge and symptom. When her period came each month, she felt a crushing disappointment that she tried to hide from Thomas. "Talk to me," he said after the fourth negative test. "I can see this is hurting you. I just wanted it to happen quickly. I know that's unrealistic, but I thought maybe after everything we went through, the universe owed us an easy time." The universe doesn't work that way, unfortunately. "But Sarah, we have time. Dr. Reeves said it could take up to a year for couples in our situation. I know, I just feel like I'm failing somehow." Thomas pulled her close. "You're not failing. We're not failing. We're just on our own timeline." They decided to take some of the pressure off, to stop obsessing over calendars and tests and just live their lives. They continued volunteering at the hospital, traveled to visit Thomas's family in Boston, and enjoyed being newlyweds. It was on a cold morning in January, almost 3 years exactly after they had first met, that Sarah woke up feeling nauseous. She tried to ignore it, attributing it to something she had eaten the night before. But when the nausea persisted for 3 days, accompanied by exhaustion and heightened emotions, she allowed herself a small flutter of hope. She took the pregnancy test in the bathroom at work, not wanting to get Thomas's hopes up if it was negative. But when 2 pink lines appeared, clear and unmistakable, she had to sit down on the closed toilet seat, her hands shaking. She was pregnant. That evening she made Thomas's favorite dinner and waited until they were settled on the couch before pulling out the wrapped box she had prepared. "What's this?" Thomas asked, looking confused. "It's not my birthday. Just open it." Inside the box was a small pair of baby shoes and the positive pregnancy test. Thomas stared at them for a long moment, not moving, barely breathing. "Sarah, we're pregnant. We're actually pregnant." He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her into his arms. They sat there crying and laughing together, overwhelmed by joy and relief and sheer disbelief. "I can't believe it worked," Thomas said, his voice rough with emotion. "After everything, it actually worked. We did it, together." The pregnancy was not without its challenges. Sarah had severe morning sickness in the first trimester, and there were moments of anxiety as they worried about every test and scan. But Dr. Reeves was optimistic, and each appointment showed a healthy, growing baby. They found out at 20 weeks that they were having a boy. Thomas cried when he saw the ultrasound, watching his son move and stretch on the screen. "He's perfect," Thomas whispered. "He's ours," Sarah said, squeezing his hand. They prepared the nursery together, painting the walls a soft gray-blue and assembling furniture with a lot of laughter, and only a little cursing when the instructions proved confusing. Friends and family showered them with gifts. Even Lily, now 10 years old and thriving, drew them a picture for the baby's room. As Sarah's due date approached, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here, the broken engagement that had led her to volunteering. The first meeting with Thomas, when he had been just a kind man terrible at stacking blocks. The slow building of friendship into love. The difficult months of fertility treatment. The tests and disappointments and small victories. Every moment had been necessary, she realized. Every challenge had strengthened them, taught them what they were capable of when they faced life together. "What are you thinking about?" Thomas asked one evening as they sat in the nursery, Sarah in the rocking chair and Thomas assembling the crib one more time because he was convinced he had not done it correctly the first time. "How much I love you. How grateful I am for all of this. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. They showed me what we're made of." Their son, Theodore Marcus Hartley was born on a sunny morning in August. He came into the world screaming his displeasure at being evicted from his comfortable home, and Sarah fell in love with him instantly. Thomas held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face, marveling at the tiny fingers and perfect features. "Hello, Theodore," he whispered. "We've been waiting for you." The early weeks of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. Theodore was a good baby, but he still required constant care and attention. Sarah and Thomas took turns with night feedings, changed countless diapers, and marveled at every tiny milestone. When Theodore was 6 weeks old, they took him to the hospital to visit the children's ward. The kids were fascinated by the baby, gathering around to see him and ask questions. Lily, now 11 and serving as a junior volunteer herself, was particularly taken with Theodore. "He looks like Mr. Thomas," she declared. "Same serious face. He does, doesn't he?" Sarah agreed, smiling down at her son. "You guys are the best," Lily said suddenly, hugging Sarah carefully so as not to jostle the baby. "You helped me when I was scared, and now you have your own baby. It's like a happy ending." "You helped us too," Thomas said, ruffling her hair affectionately. "More than you know." As they drove home that afternoon, Theodore sleeping peacefully in his car seat, Sarah felt a profound sense of contentment. Life was not perfect. They would still face challenges, still have hard days, still navigate the complexities of raising a child and building a life together. But they would do it together, the way they had done everything else. "Thank you," Thomas said quietly, reaching over to take Sarah's hand. "For what?" "For believing in us. For staying when things got hard. For giving me this family. Thank you for letting me in. For being brave enough to be vulnerable. For showing me what real love looks like." Theodore stirred in his sleep, making the little grunting noises that both his parents found endlessly endearing. Sarah glanced back at him, then at Thomas, and felt her heart swell with love so profound it almost hurt. This, she thought, was what they had fought for. Not just a baby, though Theodore was precious beyond measure, but this sense of partnership, of having someone who truly saw her and chose her every single day. This family they had built together through honesty and vulnerability and sheer determination. The struggle had been real and difficult, and sometimes seemingly impossible. But it had also been worth it. Every hard moment had led them here, to this beautiful life they had created together. As they pulled into their driveway, the setting sun painting everything in shades of gold, Sarah knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them the same way they had faced everything else. Together, with love and commitment and faith in each other. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all. The years that followed were full and joyful. Theodore grew into a curious, energetic toddler with his father's gray eyes and his mother's smile. Thomas continued to lead Hartley Pharmaceuticals, but with a better sense of balance, making sure to be present for the important moments. Sarah had started her own event planning company, one that specialized in fundraisers for medical charities, combining her professional skills with her passion for helping others. They continued volunteering at the hospital, now bringing Theodore with them. He would toddle around the playroom, sharing his toys with the other children, his presence a reminder that hope and healing were always possible. When Theodore was 3, Sarah became pregnant again, this time with a daughter they named Emma, after the little girl who had first introduced them in the hospital playroom all those years ago. The original Emma, now a healthy teenager, was honored and delighted. Life was full of the ordinary chaos of raising 2 young children. There were sleepless nights and temper tantrums, scraped knees and endless questions. But there were also family dinners and bedtime stories, dance parties in the living room, and lazy Sunday mornings. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Thomas and Sarah returned to the Italian restaurant where he had proposed. They looked at pictures of their children on their phones, marveling at how much life had changed. "You ever think about how close we came to missing all of this?" Sarah asked. "If I had not started volunteering, if you had been at the hospital on a different day, if I had been too scared to take a chance on love again after my engagement ended." "I think about it sometimes," Thomas admitted, "but I also think we would have found our way to each other somehow." "Some things are meant to be. That's very romantic of you. I have my moments." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I love you, Sarah, more now than I did when I married you, and I loved you quite a lot even then. I love you too. All of this, everything we've built, it's more than I ever dreamed possible. We make a good team, the best team." They clinked their wine glasses together, toasting to their past, their present, and their future. As they left the restaurant that night, walking hand in hand through the Chicago streets, Sarah thought about the title of her life story. How someone looking at it from the outside might describe it as "Woman Supports Billionaire Through Infertility Struggle." But that was not the whole story. It was not even the most important part. The real story was about two people who found each other at exactly the right moment, who built something real and lasting through honesty and vulnerability, who faced impossible challenges and came out stronger on the other side, who learned that love was not just about the easy moments, but about showing up when things were hard. The infertility struggle had been part of their journey, yes, but it had not defined them. Instead, it had revealed the depth of their commitment to each other, the strength of their partnership, the power of facing life's challenges together. And in the end, they had not just survived the struggle. They had been transformed by it, shaped into better versions of themselves. The difficulty had not weakened their love. It had strengthened it in ways neither of them could have anticipated. That was the real story. Not Billionaire overcomes infertility, but two people build a beautiful life together, one honest conversation and courageous choice at a time. As Sarah and Thomas walked home through the city they loved, thinking about their children sleeping safely at home with a trusted babysitter, they both felt profoundly grateful. Grateful for the hard times that had taught them resilience. Grateful for the good times that brought them joy. Grateful for each other, every single day. Their story was not perfect, but it was real and it was theirs, and it was filled with more love than either of them had thought possible. And that, Sarah thought as Thomas squeezed her hand and smiled down at her, was the happiest ending of all.